They tried to intimidate him with fake HOA rules and legal jargon. What they didn't know was he used to lead missions behind enemy lines. It was just past 9 a.m. when the truck pulled up. A beat-up silver Dodge Ram, mud crusted along the wheel wells, license plate hanging by one bolt. 3 men inside. They didn't look like delivery guys, and they sure weren't friends. Ezekiel Rowe was already up, feeding his horses along the east fence line of his 12-acre property just outside Winslow, Arizona. He spotted the truck before he heard it. Years of training taught him to always watch the road, especially the quiet ones. The men stepped out, all wearing navy blue polo shirts with a white badge stitched over the heart. The logo read, Neighborhood Compliance Authority. Not an official body, not recognized, but bold enough to sound real to someone who didn't know better. One carried a clipboard, another had a utility belt with nothing but a walkie-talkie and a flashlight. The third, taller, darker-skinned, stood with his arms crossed, sunglasses on, trying hard to look like he belonged in charge. They walked toward the gate like they owned it. "Mr. Rowe," the one with the clipboard called out, voice stiff and official. "We're here with the HOA enforcement unit. Need to speak with you about multiple property violations." Zeke didn't answer, not right away. He let them wait while he kept tying down a hay bale, one knee on the wood, steady hands moving like clockwork. His shepherd mix, Taro, stood beside him, tail still, eyes alert. It wasn't about being rude. Zeke just knew that silence at the right moment did more than words. The clipboard guy cleared his throat, louder this time. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step forward. You've got unauthorized fencing on the south perimeter. Also, outbuildings that weren't approved by the neighborhood association." Zeke finally looked up. His voice was calm, low, the kind that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. "There is no HOA out here." The man blinked. "I think you may be mistaken, sir. This land falls under the jurisdiction of the Mesquite Valley Residential Committee. Section C of the Neighborhood Code Enforcement Act applies to all. You're on county land. My deed says unincorporated. No HOA, no code enforcement office, and no committee." He walked slowly toward the fence line. Not threatening, not fast, just deliberate. The man with sunglasses shifted, putting one hand on his belt like he was ready for something. But he wasn't. None of them were. Zeke stopped 5 feet from the gate. "You boys got a badge number? County ID? Something that ties you to an actual agency?" Sunglasses guy answered, deep voice but shaky under the surface. "We've got a legal right to inspect any non-compliant structures under community guidelines. This isn't personal." Zeke smiled, but not with warmth. "You don't even know what code you're quoting." The clipboard guy looked down, mumbled something about mandatory inspection protocol. Zeke didn't blink. He watched them. Not just with his eyes, but with every muscle. From behind him, an old neighbor across the fence, Mrs. Hathaway, started walking up with her phone out. "You okay, Zeke?" she called. He gave a small wave, still keeping his eyes on the 3 men. "All good, Martha. Just got some curious visitors." That's when the tension shifted. The clipboard guy turned to look at her. The man with sunglasses shifted again, this time stepping back half a foot. They didn't want an audience. Zeke didn't need to threaten. He didn't even raise his voice. He just said, "You might want to think real hard about where you're standing and who you're trying to fool. You're not on some city block." There was a pause. The wind picked up a little. The only sound was the loose chain on the front gate clinking softly. The man with sunglasses finally spoke again, trying to keep some authority in his tone. "We'll file a non-compliance report. This isn't over." But Zeke leaned forward slightly, his voice even softer than before. "It is if you walk away now. I'd take that option." One of the men, the youngest, looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. His hand twitched. Then he dropped his eyes. They weren't used to being questioned. Not like this. But something about the way Zeke stood there made them hesitate. Zeke wasn't the kind of man to explain himself. He'd seen too many things, done too many things, to need the last word. But as he watched the three strangers linger at the gate like they couldn't decide whether to argue or leave, he could feel something deeper stirring beneath the surface. He wasn't angry. He was calculating. He'd moved out here 5 years ago, left the Navy after 22 years, 2 marriages behind him, a combat injury that still made his right knee lock up in cold weather. He bought the land from a retired professor who wanted to move closer to his grandkids. Zeke paid in full, cash, on principle. The ranch wasn't flashy. It had a single-story home he built out himself with salvaged lumber, a small greenhouse, 2 horses, and a few goats. Just enough to keep his hands busy and his mind steady. People who lived this far out didn't want to be bothered. That was the point. The nearest gas station was 12 miles away. The sheriff's office? Closer to 45. Which was probably why these guys thought they could push him. Zeke watched as the man with the clipboard flipped a page and pointed to something. It was all theater. No signatures, no letterhead, no legal code, just empty forms dressed up to scare. "You know," Zeke said casually, "there was a crew like you that tried something similar up near Tuba City last year. Claimed they were from Tribal Infrastructure Authority. Tried to fine people for improper solar panel installations." That got a flicker of surprise from the youngest one, the tall guy who hadn't said much yet. His eyes darted toward the clipboard, then back to Zeke. "What happened to them?" he asked before the others could stop him. Zeke tilted his head. "One of the homeowners was a retired cop, called in a few favors. Turns out the inspectors had rap sheets going back a decade. One of them even had warrants out in 3 counties. The clipboard guy shot a glance at the one with sunglasses. He looked annoyed now, like Zeke was wasting his time. "We don't need to explain ourselves to you," the man said sharply. "You're out of compliance. If you don't take this seriously, you'll face consequences." Zeke stepped closer to the gate, still calm, but his presence was louder now. Even Taro had taken a step forward, ears stiff. "What consequences exactly?" Zeke asked. "Fine escalation, potential property seizure. We've already documented the violations." Zeke raised an eyebrow. "Who's your supervisor?" The man paused. The clipboard guy opened his mouth, then shut it again. "Is there a name you can give me?" Zeke continued. "A phone number? A field office? Even a website?" Silence. "You came out here to intimidate someone, but you didn't do your homework. I'm not some shut-in with overdue property taxes. I've read the county records. I've sat in on the zoning board meetings. Hell, I've got a copy of the land use plan from 2018 sitting inside right now." He let that sit for a second. "You really thought you could put on a polo and hand out fake citations like it was going to scare me?" The younger guy shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable now. Sunglasses guy squared his shoulders, trying to reassert control. "We don't need to answer your questions." "No, you don't," Zeke replied. "But the sheriff's office might be interested in a few of mine." He pulled out his phone from the back pocket of his jeans and raised it, just enough for them to see it was already dialing. "Wait," the clipboard guy said quickly. "Let's just talk this through. No need to escalate." Zeke didn't lower the phone. He looked at them, each one, dead in the eyes. "You boys aren't from around here, are you?" The younger one shook his head, before catching himself. "You didn't think anyone would stand up to you way out here, where help's an hour away. But that's where you got it twisted. Out here, we help each other. That woman recording you right now, she's lived down the road since 78. The guy across the ridge, retired Marine sniper." He let the silence hang. "You picked the wrong damn ranch." But before they could leave, something shifted behind the eyes of the youngest one, and the lies started to crack. The clipboard guy's fingers twitched. He looked like he wanted to disappear. The youngest one, barely more than a kid, really, was looking anywhere but at Zeke. But it was the one in sunglasses who tried to dig in his heels. "You think this is over because you've got a phone and a dog?" he said, stepping forward. "We know what we're doing. You're not the only one we've visited." Zeke's jaw didn't tighten. His shoulders didn't tense. He just blinked slowly, the kind of blink that tells a man he's crossed a line he didn't even know was there. "You bragging now?" Zeke asked, eyes still on the guy's face. "Or confessing?" The silence that followed stretched for a beat too long, Even Taro was dead still, eyes tracking every twitch of the man's posture. From the corner of the ranch, Mrs. Hathaway's phone was still raised. Another neighbor had stepped out, a man named Benny, who drove a tractor the size of a school bus. He wasn't filming, but he was watching. "Where's your vehicle paperwork?" Zeke asked suddenly. "You got an official fleet registration for that truck?" Clipboard guy froze. Zeke took a step toward the gate, rested one hand on it like he had all the time in the world. "See, if you're part of a municipal body or enforcement unit, that vehicle should be on file, registered to the city or the county. Public info. Want me to run the plate?" The youngest man finally cracked. "We shouldn't be here," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Sunglasses guy snapped his head around. "Shut up, Trey." But it was too late. Zeke caught it. "A name. Trey, huh?" Zeke said softly, like it was nothing at all. "Didn't get your badge number, Trey. Mind telling me where you're based out of?" The kid opened his mouth but didn't speak. Clipboard guy stepped in instead. "You're making this way harder than it needs to be," he said, voice rising. "We could have just given you the citation and moved on." "You don't give citations," Zeke said flatly. "You're impersonating a regulatory agency. That's a felony." That word, felony, changed something. Sunglasses guy took a quick step back. Clipboard guy lowered the folder to his side. Trey looked like he was ready to throw up. "You want to tell me what you're really doing out here?" Zeke asked. "Or do you want the sheriff to pull it out of you?" Trey looked at the other two, then down at his boots. "I didn't know this is how it would go," he said, barely audible. "He said we were just warning people. Like knocking on doors, making sure they were following regs. You ever work with real enforcement before?" Zeke asked, not letting up. "No." "You know what a cease and desist looks like?" He shook his head. "You ever seen a real compliance order?" "No." "So you thought showing up with a fake patch and a clipboard would scare people into handing over what? Money? Access?" Sunglasses guy stepped forward again. "Don't talk to him. He doesn't speak for us." Zeke smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was over. "You've already lost control of this thing. You just haven't realized it yet." Clipboard guy started walking back toward the truck, trying to act casual, but Zeke saw the shake in his steps. Taro let out a single bark, short, sharp, and enough to make the man freeze. "You don't want to run," Zeke said quietly. "Trust me." More phones were out now. A third neighbor, someone Zeke didn't even know by name, had pulled their truck to the shoulder and started recording from the driver's seat. "Let me guess," Zeke said. "You show up to people's homes who live off the beaten path. Say you're with the HOA. Flash a form. Talk fast. Hope they get scared and pay you or let you in. Maybe you write something down. Maybe you come back. Maybe next time, someone's not home and you help yourselves." Trey looked like he wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't let him. "You thought people out here were easy. Quiet. Pushovers." Zeke took a final step forward and laid both hands on the top of the gate. "I'm not here to threaten you, but I am here to stop you." But just when it seemed like the tension had peaked, Clipboard guy reached inside the truck, and Zeke's voice turned to steel. Zeke's eyes locked on the clipboard guy's hand as it disappeared into the cab of the truck. His voice sharpened, not loud, but firm and cold. "Don't do that." The man froze. Half in, half out. His back hunched awkwardly like he couldn't decide whether to keep reaching or play it off like he'd just been grabbing a pen. Taro let out a low, continuous growl. "Back away from the truck," Zeke said, stepping around the gate now. "Hands where I can see them." Clipboard guy slowly pulled his hand out. Empty, but his face told the story. That wasn't a man reaching for paperwork. That was a man whose nerves just snapped. "Show me your ID," Zeke added. "Any of you. Let's see one official form with your name and a city seal." No one moved. Across the road, a siren pierced the air. Low at first, distant, then louder, closer. Zeke didn't even glance in that direction. His eyes were still on the three men. "You called them?" Trey asked, panic bleeding through his voice. "I did," Zeke said. "About 15 minutes ago. Told them I had 3 trespassers on private land posing as officials. Figured you'd still be here running your script." Sunglasses guy swore under his breath and turned to the truck. But now there were headlights up the road, kicking dust as they closed in. Zeke raised one hand toward the sheriff's cruiser pulling up. Just a simple wave. Not calling for help, just letting them know where the problem was. Deputy Lucero stepped out first. Late 30s, steady build, no nonsense. He'd known Zeke casually, mainly through the co-op where they both bought feed. Today, though, his posture was all business. "Mr. Rowe," he said, nodding once. "You all right?" Zeke nodded back. "Appreciate you coming. We've got 3 individuals here claiming to be part of a non-existent HOA. They attempted to enter my property, issued fake citations, and refused to show ID." Lucero glanced at the 3 men. "Names?" he asked. "They haven't offered," Zeke said. "But one goes by Trey. The other 2 haven't been that friendly." Lucero took a slow step forward. "Let's see some identification." Clipboard guy tried to smile. "We were just conducting standard residential outreach. Informational only." "Great," Lucero said, his tone flat. "Show me the documentation that gives you the authority to do that." Sunglasses guy muttered something about miscommunication. Trey kept quiet. The fear was in his eyes now, real, unmistakable. He wasn't built for this. Another cruiser pulled up behind the first. Deputy Sienna Torres stepped out, hand resting near her belt. The moment had shifted. Whatever power the 3 men thought they had, it was gone. Lucero took the clipboard, flipped through it, and gave Zeke a look. "You weren't kidding. This is a mess. No legal headers, no agency stamp. Just a bunch of language that looks scary but means nothing. Fake enough to scare the right person," Zeke said. "Especially someone older, or someone who doesn't know the zoning laws." Lucero motioned to Torres. "Run the plates. See if this truck's stolen or just shady." Trey finally broke. "I didn't know," he blurted. "I swear, man, he just said we were checking up on people, said it was for safety." Sunglasses guy snapped. "Shut up, Trey!" But it was over. Torres came back from the patrol car, eyes sharp. "Truck belongs to a local rental yard," she said. "Reported missing 3 days ago." Lucero sighed. "That'll do it." Torres stepped forward, starting the process of detaining clipboard guy. Zeke watched, arms folded, saying nothing. He didn't need to. "Appreciate your patience, Mr. Rowe," Lucero said. "Looks like this crew's been making the rounds. Might be tied to similar complaints we've had in Holbrook and Joseph City." "I figured," Zeke said quietly. "They were too comfortable." Lucero nodded toward Trey. "You good if we take their statements here before we move them?" Zeke gave a half smile. "Long as they stay on that side of the gate." The officers moved in, calm and professional. Trey was already sitting on the ground, head in his hands. Clipboard guy looked like he was trying not to hyperventilate. Sunglasses guy? Still angry. Still trying to pretend like this was a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. And now the badge he pretended to wear was on the other side of the law. But just when Zeke thought he'd seen the worst of it, Trey opened his mouth again, and what he revealed made the whole thing feel darker than anyone expected. Trey sat on the dusty ground, legs crossed, palms pressed flat against his thighs. The words came out slow at first, like he was testing the air with them. "I didn't want to be part of this," he said, not looking up. "He said it was easy money. Said nobody asks questions out here. Just roll up, flash a logo, make it look official." Lucero knelt beside him, voice steady. "And who's he, Trey?" Trey glanced up at the man in sunglasses. "Him? Dane. He was the one who set it up." Sunglasses guy, Dane, didn't flinch, just stared back like he was carved from stone. Clipboard guy, who still hadn't said a word since Torres cuffed him, looked away. Zeke stayed near the gate, arms folded across his chest. He wasn't interested in being part of the investigation, but he listened. "What were you really trying to do here?" Lucero asked. Trey exhaled. "We weren't going to hurt anyone. Just scare people. Make them think they owed fines or missed some permit thing. Then Dane would offer to help fix it for a few hundred. People paid, man. I saw them pay." Lucero's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his tone even. "You've done this before?" Trey nodded, ashamed. We hit maybe 6 or 7 homes. Mostly folks living on the edge of town, a couple of retirees. One guy didn't even speak English. They'd freak out over the paperwork and give Dane money just to make us go away. Zeke clenched his fingers into his palm. He didn't say anything, but his silence felt heavier now. Torres walked clipboard guy to the second cruiser, opened the back door, and motioned him in. Name? The man muttered something. Speak up, she said. Lyle Jarvis, he mumbled. Lutero looked back toward Zeke. You want to hear this? Zeke shrugged. Not my call. But if they've been running this scam around here, your department's got a bigger mess to clean up. Lutero stood and turned to Dane. You're Dane, right? The one in charge? Dane's lips curled into a smirk. Prove it. Lutero didn't blink. I will. He nodded to Torres. Put him in the back. We'll sort the rest at the station. As Torres led Dane away, Trey looked up at Zeke again. I really didn't know it was like this. He made it sound like a gig, just wearing a shirt, looking official. Zeke stepped closer, not out of anger, but because sometimes eye contact says what words can't. You ever think about what could have happened if you'd run into someone who panicked? Zeke asked. An old vet with PTSD, a young mom with kids, a man who felt trapped? Trey swallowed hard. I didn't think that far. That's the problem, Zeke said. Nobody does, until it's too late. Lucero cleared his throat. We're gonna need you to give a full statement at the station, Trey. You cooperating helps your case, but you'll still be held accountable. Trey nodded. Barely. Torres returned from the cruiser and leaned toward Lucero. Just got confirmation from dispatch. There's an open case file in Snowflake about a fake inspection crew. Homeowner lost $1,500. Lucero cursed under his breath. This might be part of something bigger. Zeke turned back toward his house. His job here was done. Lucero called after him. We'll be in touch, Mr. Rowe. Zeke raised a hand in acknowledgement. Didn't break stride. He wasn't looking for justice. He wasn't looking for a thank you. He just wanted his land, his quiet, his breath back. And he knew now, there were people out there trying to prey on those who kept to themselves. But before he disappeared into the doorway, Lucero said one more thing that made Zeke stop mid-step. Zeke, Lucero called out, stopping him just a few feet from his porch. There's something you ought to know. Zeke paused, turned halfway, his hand still on the screen door. Lucero walked over, quieter now, voice low enough that only Zeke could hear. This isn't random. We've been tracking reports like this for months. Always out-of-the-way places, usually owned by folks with military backgrounds or no nearby family. People who don't like attention. Zeke didn't say anything, but his eyes narrowed. They weren't just here to hand out fake violations. Lucero continued. We think they were trying to map out soft targets, places they could come back to later, maybe when no one was home. Zeke let that sink in. The implication was clear. These guys weren't just scammers. They were casing homes, looking for the isolated, the vulnerable, the ones who wouldn't be missed for a few days. Any signs of them actually breaking in? Zeke asked. Not yet, Lucero replied. But we're pulling surveillance from a spot near Holbrook. A couple who went out of town for the weekend came home to missing tools, damaged locks. No signs of forced entry. Might be tied. Zeke gave a slow nod. They're smart in the wrong kind of way. Yeah. And getting bolder. Lucero looked out toward the dirt road. They figured rural means unprotected. Zeke turned fully now. They figured wrong. Lucero cracked a tired smile. This time, yeah. But next time, it might be someone without neighbors or without a history of reading county law for fun. Zeke didn't smile. You need to go public with this. People need to know. We're preparing a statement. Want to get ahead of it before someone else gets hurt. Zeke watched the cruisers load up the 3 men. Dane still had that smirk, like even in cuffs, he didn't believe any of it would stick. You think the charges will hold? Zeke asked. Lucero shrugged. We've got impersonation, attempted fraud, vehicle theft, trespassing. Might be enough to lock them down while we dig. Depends how much Trey's willing to give us. He's scared, Zeke said. He'll talk. Torres stepped out of the second cruiser, closing the rear door with a soft clunk. "We've got everything we need here, taking them in for processing." Lucero turned back to Zeke. "You ever think about joining the department? Even part-time?" Zeke gave him a look. "I came out here so I wouldn't have to wear another badge. No offense?" "None taken," Lucero said. "Just glad you were here when they picked your place." Zeke nodded once, then turned to head inside. He unlatched the screen, stepped through the doorway, and let the wood door close behind him with a gentle thud. Inside, everything was still the way he left it. Tools stacked on the bench by the window, fresh coffee in the pot, his old flannel jacket tossed across the back of the chair. He sat down, took a slow breath, and looked out the front window. The cruisers were pulling away. The dust kicked up, then settled. Just like that, they were gone. Taro padded up beside him and laid his head on Zeke's boot. For a moment, he sat there thinking. Not about the scam, not about Dane or the clipboard or the fake citations, but about all the other homes, the ones that didn't have a dog, or a gate, or a man who could see through lies from 30 feet out. He didn't like being the story, but maybe the story needed telling. An hour later, he sent an email to the county listserv. Short, direct. A warning. 3 men pretending to be HOA officials visited my property today. They presented fake documents and attempted to gain access. Sheriff's Department has taken them into custody. Watch out for anyone claiming authority without proof. Ask questions. Keep a record. Don't assume they're who they say they are. He clicked send. Then he went back to his field. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't trying to be one. But some people don't back down when it matters. And sometimes that's all it takes to stop the wrong kind of people from thinking no one's watching. The story made its rounds faster than Zeke expected. By the next morning, a few locals had already forwarded his warning to family and friends. By lunch, someone posted it in a regional Facebook group for Northern Arizona homesteaders. By evening, he was getting calls. People he barely knew asking if he was the guy who stood up to those fake HOA tugs. He kept the conversations short. Polite, but distant. Zeke wasn't looking for attention, but it kept coming anyway. The local news out of Prescott did a 2-minute segment on it. Sheriff Lucero gave a press conference the following day, confirming the arrests and hinting at a broader investigation into property targeting scams across the region. They called it Operation Paper Shield. A woman from Snowflake who'd lost $1,500 came forward after watching the story. Then a retired couple from Camp Verde. Then a man in Winslow who had let the scammers into his tool shed thinking they were with the fire marshal. Each of them said the same thing. They didn't know what to believe in the moment. The forms looked real. The uniforms convincing enough. They hadn't questioned it, because most people don't. And that was the point. Zeke watched it all unfold from his living room. He didn't speak to the press, didn't offer interviews. When a reporter from Phoenix emailed him, he deleted the message without opening it. He wasn't interested in becoming a symbol. But he couldn't help thinking about what might have happened if it hadn't been his ranch they pulled up to, if it had been Mrs. Hathaway, or someone older, someone alone. That's the part that stayed with him. A week later, Lucero came by with a folder in hand. Wore plain clothes, no radio on his shoulder, no badge clipped to his belt. "You mind if I come in?" he asked. Zeke opened the door without a word. They sat at the kitchen table, just 2 chairs, an old enamel coffee pot between them. Lucero slid the folder across. Inside were stills from a surveillance camera posted near an old ranch up in Holbrook, images showing Dane and Jarvis walking around the back of a home with gloves on. No paperwork, no polo shirts, just prowling. "DA's pushing for felony fraud and attempted burglary," Lucero said. "Looks like they were scouting for more than just intimidation. Could have turned into something worse." Zeke didn't react much, just flipped through the photos, then closed the folder. "They'll walk unless you get someone to testify," he said flatly. "Trey's talking," Lucero replied. "Said he's done pretending. We're going to offer him a deal if he helps us tie it all together." Zeke nodded. "Good. He's just a dumb kid who didn't know when to quit. Lucero paused. He's scared, Zeke. Told me you were the only one who didn't threaten him. Said he didn't know what to do with that. Zeke looked out the window again. The wind had picked up. The grass bowed and danced under it. He's got time to figure out who he wants to be now. Lucero stood. I'll get out of your hair. Just wanted you to know how far this thing stretched. You did more than stop a scam, Zeke. You probably stopped someone from getting seriously hurt. Zeke stood too, walking him out. As the deputy reached the steps, Zeke asked, You ever wonder how many people just stay quiet because it's easier? Lucero turned. All the time. Zeke nodded once. That's what makes people like Dane think they've got the edge. Lucero didn't argue. Back inside, Zeke poured himself the last cup of coffee and sat back down. He wasn't interested in being a hero, but he knew this. When you don't speak up, the wrong people get louder. And sometimes all it takes is one person asking the right questions, calmly, clearly, to remind everyone that power without truth is nothing at all. If you've ever felt pressured by someone pretending to be in charge, or if you've seen something that didn't sit right but didn't speak up, let this be your reminder. You don't have to yell to stand your ground. Ask questions. Listen closely. Trust your gut. And if you ever feel like no one's watching, think again. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe we need more people like Zeke in the world. Quiet strength that doesn't need applause to make a difference.